Namaste and welcome. I'm Samta Aunty, the founder and CEO of Virtual Preschool, where children have fun learning Hindi through English. Today, we're going to talk about the question and answer, what would you like for breakfast in Hindi? So why are we learning this? Because you're lucky to have people who love you very much, and they want to make nice khana for you. Especially when you go to India. Your relatives will be very happy you're visiting, and they will want to make food that you'd like to eat. So we want to practice how to ask, what would you like for breakfast? Now, there's a few different ways to say this. They're all just slightly different from each other, but at the end of the day, the point is to ask, what would you like for breakfast? I'm going to show you all three ways to ask this question so that you can learn to recognize them. The first one is, what do you want to eat for breakfast? And we say, तुम नाश्ता में क्या खाना चाहते हैं? तुम नाश्ता में क्या खाना चाहते हैं? What do you want to eat for breakfast? The second one is, what would you like for breakfast? तुम नाश्ता में क्या पसंद करोगे? तुम नाश्ता में क्या पसंद करोगे? So see how they're slightly different from each other, but the point is the same, to ask, what do you want to have for breakfast? And the last one is, what will you have for breakfast? तुम नाश्ता में क्या लोगे? तुम नाश्ता में क्या लोगे? So let's look at all three of those in Hindi side by side so you can see how they're all slightly different. तुम नाश्ता में क्या खाना चाहते हैं? What do you want to eat for breakfast? तुम नाश्ता में क्या पसंद करोगे? What would you like to eat for breakfast? Or, excuse me, what would you like for breakfast? And तुम नाश्ता में क्या लोगे? तुम नाश्ता में क्या लोगे? What will you have for breakfast? And now let's put the translations in English side by side so you can see how they're different too. What would you like to eat for breakfast? What would you like to have for breakfast? And what will you have for breakfast? You might hear any one of these. I don't know which one the person that you're going to be with is going to ask, so that's why I want you to learn all three so you can recognize them. Luckily, to answer this question, you don't need to learn three different responses. I'm going to teach you one response that will work for all of them. मुझे fill in the blank चाहिए. Pretty simple, right? मुझे fill in the blank चाहिए. So, of course, what goes in the fill in the blank? Whatever it is that you want to eat. So let's say that you want to have cereal. So how would we say, I want cereal? मुझे cereal चाहिए. Again, मुझे cereal चाहिए. Now, let's say that you wanted toast. So what would that sentence be? मुझे toast चाहिए. मुझे toast चाहिए. Now, let's focus on the cereal. And remember, we're pretending to have a conversation. We don't know exactly how a conversation will go, but in the rest of this lesson are some good phrases and sentences to practice because they might be useful. So let's pretend you say, मुझे cereal चाहिए. I want cereal. Then Auntie might ask, तुम्हें दूध ठंडा या गरम चाहिए? So what did she ask you? Well, let's break it down. You should know most of these words. What is दूध? Milk. What is ठंडा? Cold. What is garam? Warm. So what do you think Auntie's asking? She's asking, do you want warm or cold milk? Cold or warm milk? Now, in this case, you can answer with either ठंडा or garam. You don't have to say the whole sentence, मुझे ठंडा दूध चाहिए or मुझे गरम दूध चाहिए. You don't have to say the whole sentence because the context of the conversation is that you're talking about the दूध already. So everyone involved in the conversation already knows you're talking about milk. So that's why you don't need to say the whole sentence. You can just respond with garam or ठंडा. All right? Now, another thing that might happen is Auntie might start naming some things to ask you if you like them or want them. For example, she might say, "Tumhe aloo paratha pasand hai?" "Tumhe aloo paratha pasand hai?" What does that mean? Well, you should recognize this too. Tumhe means do you. Aloo paratha, you know, is potato paratha. And pasand is like. So she's asking, do you like aloo paratha? Now, let's say your answer is yes. Then you would say hanji. So if you said hanji, then she might say, kal nashta mein aloo paratha bana दूं? Kal nashta mein aloo paratha bana दूं? What does that mean? Well, you should recognize these words too. Kal is tomorrow. Nashta is breakfast. Mein is in. Aloo paratha is potato paratha. And bana दूं is a form of the verb banana, which means to make. So that means that she's asking you, shall I make aloo paratha for breakfast tomorrow? Now let's say your answer is yes. Then you would say hanji. Or if it's no, then you would say nahi. And if your answer is nahi, then you could follow it up by this phrase. मुझे आलू पराठा पसंद है, लेकिन नाश्ता में मैं cereal लूंगी or लूंगा. So what does this mean? This means I like aloo paratha, but for breakfast I will have cereal. Now what's the difference between lungi and lunga? Well, that's one of our inflections in Hindi. As we know, the endings of the words change. If you are a girl, then you would say lungi. If you are a boy, you would say lunga. So again, मुझे आलू पराठा पसंद है, लेकिन नाश्ता में मैं cereal लूंगी. And I would say that because I'm a girl. But what if it was a boy speaking? मुझे आलू पराठा पसंद है, लेकिन नाश्ता में मैं cereal लूंगा. All right, I like aloo paratha, but for breakfast I'll have cereal. Let's practice the answer to the question again. What would you like for breakfast? Or what would you like to eat for breakfast? Or what will you have for breakfast? You have one simple phrase. Mujhe fill in the blank chahiye. And again, if that fill in the blank is cereal, mujhe cereal chahiye. If the fill in the blank is toast, mujhe toast chahiye. If the fill in the blank is cheese enchiladas, mujhe cheese enchiladas chahiye. All right? And here you have your cereal and toast. And guess what? Everything we learned today doesn't just apply to breakfast, just to nashta. It applies to the other meals that we've learned about too. It applies to dofer ka khana, lunch, and raat ka khana, dinner. So now you're equipped to hear those questions and recognize them and answer them in a nice and polite way. So now you're all set. You can recognize when someone asks you what you'd like for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and how to respond. Great work. Keep practicing. Dhanyavad for joining me, and I'll see you in class.